This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 12:04. Before we begin, I want to thank Kathy has agreed to take minutes. Kathy, thank you very much. Welcome. So we have acceptance of minutes from the October meeting. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the October meeting? A lot of head shaking, yes. Any additions, deletions, corrections? And none, I accept the motion to accept the minutes. Chuck Connor, thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Catherine. Motion made and second to accept the minutes of the October meeting. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Was here, so.
Okay, and one abstention, Kathy. Pat Bruff was not here, so he's abstaining.
I'm abstaining as well because I was not at the meeting.
Sorry, I didn't get a roll call in the beginning, Kathy, but everybody's here except for Joe and Eileen.
I also abstained because I was only here at the end.
Say it again, Louise.
I also abstained
Okay.
because I missed half the meeting.
Okay.
Okay, so Louise will also abstain, Kathy. Public speak. Is there anyone who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, thank you. Pat, Highland Valley report.
I'm thinking. I'm trying to think. This. I can see the smoke.
I was going to say something about smoke. But I didn't.
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. Our last meeting. I missed our last meeting, so it's been a while.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, there were a few vacations in there.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, Cindy, it's all yours.
Okay. So if people recall at the last meeting in October, I reported out on for this current fiscal year, what our projected budget would be for our expenditures. And we had a handout, but it was preliminary, so I didn't send it out to you yet. Because this time we were going to go over what have we expended so far of the quarterly general report that we make. And then what is the revenue that we expect we would receive or already have in our revolving accounts for this fiscal year. And then compare that and take a look at last year. How were we doing going into last year? And how did we do coming out of last year? And the point is not that you are a governance board with fiduciary responsibility that needs to approve how we're spending down to the penny. The point is that you're informed enough that I can come to you and say something like, hey, every year we finish out with an account being in the black about by this much right now. Does it seem reasonable that our ride fares should be about the amount that they are? Should we think about reducing or increasing? You know, like general, able for you to give us general advice. So this first quarter, July through September, I only have preliminary figures for some of the accounts for the auditor before she went away. So, and then for the last year, I do have the final figures. So here we go. And then what I'm going to do is, I have nothing that I'm going to actually hand you today. I'm going to talk with you about how it's looking, the thoughts that I have, and then solicit some of your thoughts. And then the program manager and I are going to meet in January. And what we're going to look at is, given how we've been doing with the figures I have for the last few years, do we want to think about changing our programming so that more of it is free or more of it costs less or more of it costs more? And just take a look at some of this. And are there some big things we've been putting off to spend that we should buy? Okay, so this year, the general fund budget was up to almost $260,000 because we brought on a new full-time position, and so it has increased over the years. That was the clerk who we brought on. So far to date, as of September, we had expended about 58,000 of that. So we're on track with personnel that we're spending. You know, we've spent the right amount of money from there. Our formula grant, the auditor took almost $30,000 out of the formula grant at the beginning of the fiscal year because that covers part of 2 salaries. So this year, the first time ever, they took a big chunk at the beginning, as far as I can tell, so that we don't end up having to transfer money at the end of the year. So as I go through this, it'll look like we've spent down on the formula grant significantly in advance of getting the money from the state. But it's to make it easier to pay the staff. So we're right where we should be for the city general fund money. And for personnel, for the expenses, we have very few expenses the city allows for under this year's budget. It's just a tiny bit of mileage and a little bit of building repair maintenance money, about $1,000. And we haven't spent that yet, but we have plans to do so.
What was that 58,000 number?
The 58,000 is what we've spent on personnel so far to date since July 1, out of, you know, the 250 something thousand dollars that we have for personnel.
Okay, so 250 is just personnel.
It's 250, so it's 258, 732 is personnel, and then it's 1,257 for everything else, any other expenses. We're going to request that we get postage next year, even if it has to come from somewhere else in our budget, but we're gonna try to get into the central purchasing. We're like, I think maybe the only department that doesn't have postage. Okay. So our van account. So we budgeted $10,000 for our van account. So far, we've only spent like just under $700 because, you know, we haven't had that many repairs yet, but it turns out we're going to be running our old vans a lot longer than planned because of how long it's taking to get the replacements that we're going to lease. So it's really good to keep some funds in there, and I'm going to go into revenue in just a minute. I'm just giving you this quick fiscal picture of where we're at at this point in the year. And we have brought in the van account almost $6,000 in donations. It's called donations, but those are those rider fees. And then if somebody makes a donation, like a few hundred or $1,000 from a community group towards the van program. And that's about right where we should be. And then in that fitness account where people pay money for those fitness memberships and for all their fitness and art classes and field trips, we spent about $6,000 so far on supplies and equipment that we need to run our activities and buy that treadmill we bought. And we've brought in about $4,400 in donations to date. Those are just fees for using the classes. We don't get any gifts that go in that account. That Highland Valley account where we're working off over $20,000 when I started of old grant money. We spent almost $750 on the volunteer driver's mileage. And of course, nothing's coming in because we haven't applied for a new grant for this round, but I'll talk about how we should do that soon. And then our formula grant, the one that is $66,892 for this year. That was the increase that we got because there's more older people in Easthampton. We've like I said before, we spent almost $30,000 already because they took the money for the $24,000 in salary out already to transfer to the general fund. And the money, the first half of that, we just got it the other day. It's not in the report yet. I don't know. I think that's new that they're paying us in installments. Okay. And the other things, are less critical. Like we're finally getting the money in for that vehicle earmark where we bought the new vehicle. We got the first half and now we're going to get the second half very soon. And that'll wrap up that $75,000 earmark that Senator Beal has helped us get for that new Ford Transit. So that's just like our little quick quarterly report of where we're at right now. But more importantly, I want to talk to you about what is the revenue for this year that, that we have. So let me just go there. So the way that we finished out last year, so we, back in, I think June, I gave you a report that showed you as of May, what had we spent last year on all the different types of things that we spend money on, and where did I think we were at? And so I have refined that. Let me get to that. And then I looked at what percentage did we finish at? If you looked at how we started, I think this is more important than the numbers. How did we start last year and how did we finish? So if you look at that van account, we started with about $29,000 in that van account. We spent about $7,000 on repairs, and then repairs, and actually about half repairs, half went towards that new vehicle because the earmark didn't cover the whole thing. And we brought in those rider fees and a couple of donations, about $12,000, which is a recovery from the pandemic. My first year here, we were low because we were only driving a few people a day. Now we're back up in the number of rides. And we ended that year, we started that year with about 29,000. We ended that year with about $34,000. So that's good because we're in a situation where nobody pays for the repairs but us. Yeah. Thankfully, we don't have to pay for gas, insurance, or excise. So, so the percentage that we ended over is about 118%. So what I don't know yet, what I'm trying to explain is I don't know how the previous directors ran that. Did they try to finish out the year so that they didn't lose anything from that account? They always had a nice balance in there to pay for repairs or to buy, go into buying a new vehicle, or did they expect that they would spend quite a bit so they would finish well under 100% of their starting balance? So that's where we're at with the van.
Well, when it just real quick on that, when it comes to repairs, obviously you can budget a number, but you never know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. My only recollection, I don't ever recall lowering fees so that we would bring, like, you ended up with, even with those expenses, you ended up with $5,000 more than you started with. Mm-hmm. Someone might look at that and say, well, we're charging too much, maybe we should lower the fees. Mm-hmm. But what happens when the transmission goes next week?
Right.
So I don't think there's a need to try to bring that back down at any reason.
And I can tell you, the van that we were hoping that we were retiring in June, that is our only one that holds 10 people plus a wheelchair. That one, the air conditioner is broken in the passenger compartment. I have to see how much I'm bringing it to PVTA to see how much. They're the only ones who can possibly fix it. And if that costs a ton of money, we have to fix it. You know how hot it is around here in the summers now. Yep. So something like that, oh my God, who knows?
Right.
And we're not getting the replacement for that until probably 2 years, given how slow the replacements are. So yeah.
I think you build that account up as much as you can.
Right. And the fees are low. We've actually talked about whether we should come up with something like where maybe for some kind of income eligible level, we would do free transportation. But can you imagine if everybody is struggling? So who are we to decide that one person is struggling more than another person who rides our van? So
one of the thought that's in the too is about suggesting we not lower any fees. Mm-hmm. We also shouldn't lose sight of necessary increases to fees based on the market. Mm-hmm. So if you were looking around to other senior centers, then our fees are way too low. Just because we're sitting on some excess funds shouldn't be a reason to not raise the fees just to keep them in line with the market. Otherwise, you fall way below the market. Because when that air conditioning bill comes in for $5,000 or whatever, you're gonna need the money.
Yeah.
So again, my only recommendation is if our fees should stay in line with what COAs are getting for transportation fees.
One thing that, well, let's move on, because I like this. This is what we're, this is the point of talking with you folks, to see what's your input, and then we'll put that in the hopper, and we'll keep thinking and talking about this. So the other account that's similar to that van account is the fitness account. Again, people are paying for their art classes, field trips, and fitness classes and fitness memberships in the cases where it's not free. Sometimes it is free. Every week there's free classes. And also there's a benefit to charging for some of these things, because then people show up, especially for the more expensive things. Sometimes we have them prepay, but rarely. So that fitness account started the FY23 last year with about $29,000, and we spent about just over $7,500. And that basically went, 1,000 of it went to instruction. I've changed that now. No instruction comes out of that fitness account anymore because of that increase we got to our state formula grant. I'm trying to take all instruction out of there. And then we spent about $5,200 on supplies that go directly to benefit the participants, like, bocce balls or, food for an event. And repairs to the building or equipment that have to do with our activities, about $700. We deposited in those fees we collect just over 11,300. And I had told you I thought it would probably be somewhere around 10,000. And then we ended at almost $33,000, so that the percentage over the starting balance, it was 113%. So just like with the van account, we maintained. Now, of course, right away, right after June 30th, I went and bought a treadmill for like $5,000 something, and that's in this year. But, and there's another piece of equipment I could easily replace that's not looking so great. And I could also do maintenance on all the fitness equipment. And there's a lot of things we haven't done that have to do with participants directly using the building for, all our activities. I would say one of the things that we haven't done is that we've started doing in this year, and you'll see that in this year's expenses, is improving the lighting, improving the DPW is taking care of some of the things, like they're working on the HVAC a little bit to try to keep it from being so cold in the basement. So there's other things we could do that are deferred, I would say, maintenance and cosmetics on that building. But we've all said we want to spend as little money on the building as possible,
Right.
but we could be there a while. So there are things like, nobody's painting, and it's such a big deal because it's got lead paint and everything else, and the spaces are starting to look really unpleasant. So, there's, we can talk as time goes on about, we should probably even do a tour of the senior center as part of our building feasibility. What's our plan for temporary? Walk in, fresh eyes, look at the place, and just look at, what do we need to keep operating this place in as good a way as possible? All right, next, the Highland Valley, we started at, and this is Title III money that was written to be used for transportation and food delivery. So we started at about $26,000. Last year, we spent about $2,700 on the volunteer driver mileage. And of course, we took in nothing because we're not getting any current grants. So there we spent about 90% of our balance, leaving us plenty of money for that volunteer driving program to carry us through. And we'll use a lot more mileage this year, like I told you last time, just to carry us through until we write for another grant. And that's a very popular program. So I'm happy that we have that money. Okay. Our gift account, that's our other revolving account.
Did you say where that one ended?
That one ended at about 90% of where it started at about almost $24,000. And I have this written down. It's just like a giant spreadsheet, and I can, for people who are interested, I can try to produce something that you can digest more. Our gift account. Okay. Remember, the balance of this gift account is mostly that there was a bequest made. The senior center cashed in on that land or something at some point, and that's mostly what's in there. People make donations every year, and we pretty much spend those. But the balance of it, that $19,000, that's always in there. We try to keep it there in case we want to do something special that nobody could fund any other way.
Right.
And I don't know what that would be, but I don't want to make that decision by myself. So last year we brought in about $8,000. Thank you to just all the regular people. We don't solicit that money. They just come forward and give us money, about $8,100. And we spent on event supplies, equipment, and furniture that we really wouldn't have gotten any other way, about $6,300. I say wouldn't have gotten any other way. That was the old thinking. Old thinking was formula grant is so small. Fitness account has to be saved for fitness equipment. We better not spend too much money on anything, and poverty mentality. So when I first came here, I couldn't even buy office supplies at all. So I took them out of that gift account. But now I feel more comfortable, like, okay, our formula grant expanded, where people have come back from the pandemic and they're paying for their rides and paying for their classes. I don't have to like go to that account to buy, pens.
Right.
Okay. But we did, when I say we bought furniture, we bought, there we go. We bought 2 wing chairs that you'll see at the senior center because somebody made a gift. And they said, we really want this to be for the enjoyment of seniors in our community. And it was just about the right amount to buy those wing chairs. And that feels really good and logical. It was not a designated gift. So I'm making decisions like that, just hoping that, that fits. Okay. And that formula grant, just so you understand how this works. So in the past, 2 years ago, it was like 40-something thousand dollars. Then last year it was $62,544. That was a placeholder for when we got the census back. When the census came in, UMass changed it, and that's why we're now getting almost $67,000. So last year we started out with about $13,000, just due to various transitions. Oh, because we didn't go Dawn from activity coordinator to program manager until later than we planned. It was most of that. So then we got the grant last year, that $62,544. That's a revenue that came in, and we finished up with about almost $33,000, which you'd think, oh, why is there money left? Well, there's money left because now that there's more money in that state formula grant, and we're coming off that whole poverty mentality of hardly spending any money. Now we're refiguring, okay, so we can have more programming, we can have more staff, we might have more staffing on that. It's not quite enough for more staffing. And so we knew that we would spend almost all of that right away. Like I told you, they took $29,000 out immediately. So it's good it's a 10-year grant. I think we're in the 2nd year of the 10-year grant, and we're encouraged, don't just spend it all every year, because you're going to have so many expenses at the beginning. Otherwise, you're asking the city to float money till whenever the state sends the money. That's one. And then 2, we might have big expenses that aren't weekly or monthly, that aren't staffing, that aren't the Tai Chi instructor who comes in every week, that we need to get something for the COA. Like, we have so much electrical costs over there, and we do not get enough money between DPW and what we get in that city expense side. I got $1,000 for the whole year. Like, the electrician walks in the door and it's $500 or $1,000. Every time we touch something in there, we need to do electrical or we need to do something. DPW covers a lot of things, but not everything. So we can talk more in we're going to be giving the state a report about how we spend that state formula grant money for the first time in a long time. They're going to ask for a report. So you'll get a copy of that. So it'll be, what did we spend in FY23? And then, okay. We finally spent that furniture earmark. It doesn't really reflect on this year's budget, but last year, FY23, we finally bought all that furniture from the earmark Dan Carey helped us get when we were going to move to Manchester Hardware, and that's all wrapped up with FY23 and done. So in terms of how we finished out FY23, I could just conclude by saying I feel good that we got more money from the state. The city expanded our staffing, and people came back from the pandemic and are participating in activities. Now what the job is to look at is who's participating, how many are participating, are there programs that really are not working out so well, ones that are working great, ones that we need more of. I'll just put in a little statement about marketing in here real quick. And then I'll talk to you about the revenue for this year. I don't know what time we're at. Okay. Dawn worked really hard. If you look at our newsletter, you can probably see this if you know what you're looking for, to make such a breadth of programming for this year. I mean, we've gone all out. There's tons of programming. The thing is, and we joined the rest of city in using the city website, and we populated that calendar. If you look at the calendar, almost a ton of the events are ours that are on the city's calendar. Very few people subscribe to the city website or to the city calendar, and even fewer subscribe to the COA calendar. So here we are making all this capacity, things for people to do. And then we have the infrastructure of marketing. So we have a new email service. We have a very good, 38% open rate on those emails that we send once a month with the newsletter. We have the print newsletter. We have about 500 people on that email list. We print about 1,400, 1,200 copies of that newsletter. We make Facebook posts, but of course they're not seen by that many people because we're not paying for them. So here we have the programming and we have the infrastructure of the marketing, and we're not driving people to that except for two new things that we did. Signing up more people for the email newsletter and sending out that mailing we sent out, welcome to Senior Center, all people turning 55 and 65. That was earlier this fall, and it definitely got a response. However, what's missing from our marketing is, first of all, paid digital marketing, and then maybe radio ads or newspaper ads or just anything that drives people to where our publicity is. Oh, and of course there's press releases, earned media coverage, which, works somewhat. So in trying to decide how much do we extend ourselves to make more and different programming and use these funds to pay for that, if you don't do the marketing piece, you can't be sure that you're driving all the traffic to use all of that. And on the staffing side, what we have going on is working really hard to do that level of programming that we're doing. Look at Dawn, because not only is she planning it, she's actually operating some of that programming, leading it, teaching it. It's how much should we do that? Because we also need her and I to do planning and marketing. So this is what I'm trying to figure out in the next few months is, do we need to tweak that? Would it be better to be more like some of the other senior centers and offer less so that the staff can do more of this planning, strategic work, marketing, and trying to outreach and get people to come in? We'll know if there's classes where very few people are attending, we could prune there. But similarly to when I was actually at Cancer Connection, you kind of want a whole wide menu of things so you catch the people who maybe they only want to do that one thing with you. They just want to come into that dance cardio class and they want nothing else. if we didn't have dance cardio class, they might not come.
Right.
And then when it's time for them to get help with, say, fuel assistance, you know, they're there and they know us. So it's a balance.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That's just my little plug for marketing. And
So
then,
one other thing to keep in mind, and again, under the heading of, we don't want to spend a ton of money in this building, but some of us still work for a living. No, let me rephrase. Some of you still work for a living.
Right.
And some of us are just working, but not for a living. And sometimes the only time we had an opportunity to have eyes on the senior center was for these meetings. So we'd come in a little bit early, be able to waltz around, talk to a couple people, go downstairs for a meeting, whatever. I'd love to see if there's a way going forward that we could have this meeting, remote, hybrid, whatever, back in the senior center. And I don't know what it takes for technology to get us back there.
I have a report on that. November 28th, we get our new TV on a cart with a hybrid meeting bar. It's not going to be perfect given all the ambient noise in the senior center, and the lack of a place. Like, we would have to close the center for the meeting. I think the main room, we'd have to make it quiet and, you know, pull up that TV. So we'll do a trial run. If it works, then we could do the meetings there. The difference, as Stan has pointed out before, is that the filming of it wouldn't look as good, although we don't have the meeting owl today. So, you know, obviously you can see on there what it probably looks like to the world. So that is an option. And then I'm also researching with the state. Many people are having a conversation across the state about hearing impaired. I'm trying to find out what kind of tech we need so that it would probably be expensive. So we could have live captioning when people are instructing, presenting, and meeting.
But that kind of technology investment is probably transferable someday to a new facility, or based on the amount of time it'll take us to get there, probably be outdated and have to be replaced by then anyway.
Right.
What do they tell you, like every 3 years?
Yeah, exactly.
3 to 5 years.
So just to point out, like that whole TV setup, and which we're having a vendor do, is like $8,000. And then also we're getting new assistive mics and an instructor with a mic and then personal
Nice.
receivers. And that's going to be, I forget how much, a couple thousand. I've tried to get grant money for it. So just that right there, that whole $10,000 something project, that's coming out of the state formula grant. If we hadn't gotten that increase, we wouldn't be able to buy stuff like this. Well, or maybe we would have taken it out of the gift account. We would have exhausted the fitness account with that. And I don't know that I would have gone to city council. I need a special appropriation to buy a TV. So these are the choices that we have to make. Okay.
Louise has a question.
Yeah, 2 questions. Yeah, Mom. Okay, the simple one, because you were just discussing it, was, does the hearing technology, is this participant to participant? Can people talk to each other, or is it only the presenter, the instructor?
So the way that would work is you would it's like passing the torch. You would have to take that mic, pass it to the next person, and then they would speak to everyone. Yeah, that's how. We also have we have a bunch of old stuff that we don't even know what it is, where it's from. We showed it to 2 consultants and they were like, just get rid of that. So that might have enabled that. I'm not sure. Okay.
She had a second.
Yeah, sorry, I had a second question going back to the marketing, where I have some experience. Are you tracking uptake and whether it's new people or people who are already there? And characteristics?
If they sign in. And so a new thing that we're going to be doing is using a senior tax work-off worker, equipping them with a tablet and a clipboard, and having them literally walk around when classes are starting and say, did everybody check in? Did everybody pay if there's a fee? Because people just slip by all the time. Yeah.
My other question is how much we're attracting newcomers or people, the walking into the center. That's number one. But how many eyes translate into action?
Yes, so so everybody who joins the senior center, they're date stamped when they join, so we know who's new, although my staff weren't, if somebody is only being served by transportation, they never set foot in the center, then they probably weren't filling out a membership form and we just stuck their name in the system, you know what I mean? And so sometimes people will come in, they seem new. But anyway, at least it's date stamped. But we can also tell when did they start using activities.
Yeah.
So somebody could have been almost like a dormant member for years. They're not really using the center. We can use our database to figure out how active are they, and so yes.
My other question was,
Louise, you said
people
too.
who open the newsletter and don't take action or maybe walk by, but I mean, do you have a direct, I can't remember if there's many clickable options on it. Do you have any of that kind of system?
So this is what we've done or what we've tried. And all this is me. I have to do this. So, I have limited time. So the first email newsletter of our new system, which is Zoho, what we did was, it was more like what Dawn has been doing, where you compress the PDF of the newsletter and you attach it. You put it on the website and there's a link to the whole newsletter, right? The newsletter is not going to be clickable as a PDF on the website. However, we then explored, IT and I explored, could we put anchors on the website and the newsletter? We would have to transfer everything that's in that newsletter into the website every month and put anchors in it so that it would then be clickable to the newsletter. And we all determined that's not what we want me doing. Right. And there's nobody else really who can do that there. So if I got a really tech savvy senior tax work off person, we could teach them how to do that. So instead what we've done is, because somebody who has vision issues asked for this, I take every single page of that newsletter and make it a photo. I put it on Facebook, which is where she wants it. And then she can zoom in on it on Facebook more easily than she can on the website. Yep. So it's just like a quick and dirty compromise. Yep. I'm sorry we're not there yet, but let's move on because I know you want to hear about this year's revenue. And what time are we at? 12:42. Okay. So for this year, let me Oh, right. Okay. So we kind of talked about that along the way of talking about FY23, because we told you how we finished up FY23. And so for this year, our revenue is basically the same from the same sources: van fees and donations, the fitness class fees and the gym memberships, the revolving money we have in gifts and that old Title III money from Highland Valley, and then the city appropriations, and then that formula grant which increased. And so for this year, the only things that have changed are, well, I told you what the new formula grant amount is, that it changed from the 62,544 to the just over 66. But other than that, yeah, I think you have all the information about what we have for this year and what we have, and I told you what we've spent to date. And just trying to think if there's anything else that we didn't really go over. Does anybody have any questions? Things you want me, so this would be like things you want me to research, things you think we should take into account when we're thinking about raising fees or reducing fees or making new programming or spending, money. They're spending money on the operations that I've described to you, like, running our transportation services and offering our activities and getting our equipment and supplies versus working on the building, the bigger things.
I think as long as our fees are competitive, not below market, not market. The last thing we want is seniors saying I can join the fitness program in Northampton or go there cheaper than I can in Easthampton. We don't want them to be way below market, and we don't want them to be way above. We just have to find that sweet spot.
It's funny you mentioned Northampton. They are more expensive than us for certain things. Like they have their classes that cost $100 for a series, or their fitness memberships might be different. They have a different partnership with the Y. I forgot to mention something. Our fitness account is increasing credits relative to debits simply because the Y is cheaper than all our old instructors. Almost all of our fitness instructors are from the Y. They charge $35 a class, and the others charge like say $50 or $60 a class. So right there, we catch up a little faster.
Yeah.
However, we have more classes than we did. So, this is just, so if you think of that, maybe 8 people are taking a fitness class and paying $5 each, and that class costs $35. We're kind of breaking
Right.
even, but then sometimes people just don't pay. And so it's good that some people do pay.
Right.
And other questions?
I will just say on the marketing piece, like the Facebook thing, I know we're not paying for that, but I do think this city has typically over the last 5-10 years now, probably there are a lot of folks on Facebook. So while you're not paying for those ads, I try and share as many as I can, and I try to get other folks to share them. It's not perfect, but it does definitely get out there to the folks. And there are a lot of people who don't necessarily engage, but they see it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that's a big thing.
And I think you'd be surprised at the number of seniors on Facebook, because
Yeah.
more and more of the younger generation is
Right.
saying, I don't do Facebook anymore. That's my parents.
Right. Yeah, right, exactly.
Right, and we have to be hip to when do we switch? When are the people in their 50s now paying attention enough that we should do something on Instagram, say? We don't use that at all, but those of us in our 50s might be on that more, I don't know. And while we're talking about money, if we can afford to start doing some paid marketing, I think that we should have a marketing plan before we do that. And I have the bones of one.
Yeah.
And having talked with people who are experts in marketing, I can tell you the one thing that wouldn't cost us a cent that we're not doing is our open rate in our emails is 38%. That's too high for just emailing once a month. That means we have room to email people more often.
Wow.
So we could reach out more times. We
Yeah.
could even reach out weekly and just risk that some people unsubscribe with more information.
Yeah.
Not just what's in the newsletter even, but as like there's this building project,
Or upcoming classes
upcoming
that aren't
classes.
full yet. You say, hey, don't forget, we have a class next week. We've got to
Right.
get somebody who
Right.
it appeals to.
Right.
Yes, exactly. Because people do not want what we used to do was the robocalls. People just don't want robocalls
Right.
anymore. And then actually we get, I forget what it's called, but we get considered spam
Yep.
if even one person
Yep.
calls and says, I got that robocall to Verizon or whatever. It took us 2 months last year to get unspammy. So that's like a huge investment of time and energy. Is it even worth doing robocalls? I don't know. So
Probably.
More annoying.
I know that we have we have old business, so I don't want to
No,
take up.
all we have is the senior tax work-off program update. So you have about 9 minutes
Okay.
if you need that much.
Okay. This is like my old job when I was in early childhood. liaison work and I would talk for the whole meeting. And like, I don't ever want to do this again because there's so many things board members can help with. And in December, I think we could talk about another project, which is about a round table we're going to do in the spring on housing. And so I'm going to put that on for new business next time. And how can board members help with that? But so senior tax work-off was approved by city council. It is approved as
Approved to be permanent.
to prove to be permanent, and the language is basically what the state says.
Yeah.
So what that means is that unless it requires another city council vote, we're just gonna operate as we are now. And the things that would require another city council vote would be, say, you want to appoint a proxy, your neighbor's son, to go mow the city cemetery on your behalf because you're 90 and you can't do it. That would take a city council vote. We don't allow proxies. The status quo is up to 20 people can do it. The maximum, even though the state raised the maximum credit allowable to $2,000 with a lot of advocacy from councils on aging and others, and from the Mass Council on Aging, not every town can just afford to take their 20 or 70 or however many people and raise it to 2,000 all at once. So the mayor decided we're going to stay at the 1,500 for this coming year, FY20, well, tax year 2024, or tax year 2025, work in 2024. So the work that starts this January, the applications are open now. The income eligibility is going to stay the same. It's the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, low moderate income, which goes pretty high for Easthampton. So people living alone who are the high 60s thousands dollars a year can qualify. And that gives us a lot of room for all different kinds of skill levels, abilities.
So that's a real down and dirty PSA that could go out in an email or Facebook or whatever.
Yeah, so that is. So I'll tell you what we're doing for marketing. So it's in the newsletter. It's in the December newsletter, just came out. It's not on the Facebook yet because the city's going to do a press release from their end, which I need to write yesterday. And but just so everybody who's watching this meeting understands, those applications are available at City Hall and at the COA, and they're posted on our website. Get them in. They're due December 14th. People who have already been doing it can reapply. If the number of qualified candidates who have skills and abilities that matches the jobs that we happen to have available in January is about equal, we don't do a lottery. But if we got a ton of applications of qualified people who also have skills and abilities for the particular jobs, we'll figure out a fair and just system for doing a lottery. Either the whole program would have a lottery or sections would have a lottery. Like if nobody else wants to clean medical equipment at the COA, I'm not doing a lottery for that position. But if everybody wants to work at the police department and they're qualified, so we'll work that out. We'll figure that out. All those kinds of administrative things happen between the COA director and the whole big team at City Hall that works on this: collections, assessor, HR, auditor, etc. And then the board's role in senior tax work-off has always been to advise. And the first couple of years, you even helped us interview people for positions. And what I found is that it was so helpful at first, but now I need to work directly with the department heads to hire people for those positions. And I think if we get the board involved, it's going to slow it down when these people, some of these departments need people to start like right away.
I will tell you from experience of Joe and I with the director, did this start under Brendan or was it?
Started under Brendan.
We had an opportunity to interview for the first 2 years, and there are some great candidates that come forward with a great skill set.
Yeah.
And a lot of the departments that said they wanted to keep the person on permanently,
Right.
as opposed to the program. I could not make that meeting for the city council, and I don't know why I didn't email them or something, because there was one piece of it I was hoping they were gonna potentially tweak.
Okay,
And it's the piece that says you have to be current on your taxes.
I can report back on that. So that's not for city council to decide. The definition in Easthampton of what it means to be current on your taxes, we have been discussing that a lot as the administrative team. There's like a point in the year in which you could be like current or not current on property, water, and sewer. The problem is there's also a point in the year when you have to do the application, you know, and so whatever, we haven't found yet, where is that, I may not be explaining this very well, but where is that point at which you draw a line and say it's current or not current? I don't think that is set in stone, and it's done differently in different towns.
Where I was going with that though, Cindy, is just blanketly in the beginning, saying you have to be current on your taxes seemed a bit counterintuitive when these are folks that need help with their taxes. Not just help reducing it by the amount of money they might get from this or benefit they might get from the program, but reducing it because I'm having problems paying my taxes.
Right.
And I was hoping they might, the city might consider, if it's not city council, then might consider that if I'm 1 quarter behind, I can still be considered for the program.
Right.
If I'm a year behind in my taxes, forget it, you got bigger problems. But if I'm 1 quarter behind, or whatever the right number might be, because our taxes are paid quarterly, if I'm 1 quarter or 2, whatever it might be that I'm behind, could I still be considered
Right.
as an applicant for the program?
Right. So, and in the end, basically that's up to that administrative team headed by the mayor. In fact, maybe even not so much the meetings we have where I'm included, but the finance team meetings. So I'll bring that to them, that there was a question on the board about that.
I mean, what does the program allows them to eliminate an old debt?
Mhm.
What's so bad about that? What's so bad about eliminating an old debt versus reducing a future tax payment?
Right. Something else to keep in mind is that, just in case people ask and get confused, this is to benefit the municipality, but we are adding one new place that you can work, which is the library, even though they're not a city department, because over half of their operating expenses come from the city. And all the experts in this field, I brought their expertise to bear on that conversation. And so everybody agreed that's what we're doing, but not somebody like the food pantry, Easthampton Community Center, or Easthampton Media, because it's not the same level of support.
And what's the time frame, their work period? Because I know that was a little confusing.
They can work from this year, 2024, January 1 through October 15. We're ending 2 weeks earlier this year because there's just not enough time to process everything to make sure that people actually get a credit and not a refund. So that's senior tax work off.
That's the only other thing you can do.
Yeah. And then I don't know, is this done at other committees, to talk about items for new business on the next agenda when you're all together, or is that always done separately by the board chair?
Well, I'm thinking of school building committee. We always had an agenda item that said new business.
Yeah.
And it allowed people to raise a new business item. But as you know, couldn't be discussed in depth at the meeting, had to be put on the agenda for the next meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
So basically it would ask, is there any new business to be brought up? In a sense, what you're saying, is there any new business to be brought up for the next meeting?
Right.
Okay.
And we could ask that.
Could we ask that with our last few minutes, Chair?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is there any new business to be brought up for the next meeting?
We have 2 minutes.
We have 2 minutes.
So 2 minutes. Monday, April 8th, we're having a roundtable on housing, which is such a huge topic, but we have a lot of commitments from legislators and area organizations and so on, and I'm refining that. And so the new business for next time would be to set up a committee that works with me. Like, we'll ask you, can we set up a committee to work with me on, because it's going to be a big deal to actually make it happen, and it'll be catered, and it'll be
What's the focus of that roundtable?
housing, affordable housing, older people, the future. What are we looking towards as a system in Massachusetts and locally?
Because interestingly, without getting into discussion that we shouldn't get into in advance, but just a point of information, I was particularly involved with the Northampton Street project, Tasty Tot project. And what I found out was that they're going to have about 55 or 57 affordable units in that development. And they had an affordable housing expert that was advising them through the whole process. And he had a great explanation for affordable housing, how it worked, because some people heard the numbers and said, how is that affordable? The problem is the state sets that number. And he said, what's affordable in Cambridge might not be affordable in Easthampton, but it's a statewide number they set. So when people hear an affordable apartment that's $1,500 a month or $1,800 a month, they say that doesn't sound affordable, but unfortunately that's the guideline we all live with.
Right.
And then just to wrap it up, so that would be an area where board members could volunteer just physically with an event, but also board members who are interested could volunteer in terms of the thinking behind the event and doing the outreach to get people there and so on. And that's under the heading of advocacy. And so we never finished our conversation about boards and what do they do these days, COA boards, and there's a lot of interest in that statewide. What are COA boards doing now that they're not governance boards? And that's being redefined by Mass Council on Aging, and they're providing guidance on that and training, and there's a lot of discussion. So that could be another agenda item, which could be that we do a hybrid meeting where we have people from Mass Council on Aging and other centers chime in and come in and talk with us about their doing. So if there's interest in that, I know some towns where there are board members and directors who would be happy to come and visit with us remotely and chat about, you know, what are other towns doing with their boards and board members.
So just back real quick on that housing roundtable, is there a facilitator you will have for that, or is that just a open conversation?
That's going to be co-hosted by the mayor and I.
Okay.
And but anyway, we can talk more about details next time.
Quick question, Louise. We have a minute, or we're a minute over.
You're muted.
You're muted, Louise.
It was details about the housing forum, because I'm working with a group of people who are interested in housing, and they've done some initial things. I mean, will it be daytime or evening? Will it be hybrid? Can people who work attend? Can older people who don't attend in person attend?
We'll talk about that next time, because I know that I actually have to be at the doctor in 15 minutes in Northampton, and we all know what it's like to drive to Northampton.
And that will be an agenda item, Louise. So could we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Kathy, Pat Ruff made a motion to adjourn and Chuck Connor seconded.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye. Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. See you all.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.